I'm Adrienne Parks. I applied for a commission in the U.S. Army approximately, February of 1976. Accepted it approximately June of 1976 and showed up for Officer Basic at Fort McClellan, Alabama in September of 1976. I served there until July of 1977. Went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, where I served my officer training in the Signal Corps, and actually spent the rest of the 2.5 years of my initial tour there in Fort Gordon, which is Augusta, Georgia. After getting out, I had been accepted to graduate school at UCLA, so I moved across the country and continued as a Reserve Army officer. I'd been, at that point, promoted to captain in the U.S. Army Reserves and served primarily as the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, which was the ARCOM, Army Reserve Command newspaper, for the southern western states. I left at approximately 1983 or 84. I basically have been a writer all my life. My mother actually taught me to read and write based on the Washington Post, which was the newspaper just outside of DC in Maryland, where I grew up. And I think I probably always had a sense of activism and history and drama growing up just outside of DC. I became very involved in theater in DC. And during my service in the military, I actually wrote a number of one-act plays, several of which were given in dramatic reading at the Fort Gordon dinner theater, as we shall call it. It was an ad hoc theater. But often my work was engaged in or packaged into other events that typically could include anything from an athletic event to my stage dramatic reading to an art show. So it was quite eclectic, but the military actually bought me time to develop my craft, in that I spent most of my off-duty hours at the Art Center, which was actually a complex on the base that cost nothing, and yet where you could meet other writers and talk about the things of the day that were important to you. And of course, you could bring your writing in and talk to other people who also believe that writing, the arts, drama were integral to the survival of to any military person, because obviously I'm speaking to an audience that knows what I'm talking about. And if you don't have a way to express your inner angst, your inner child, when you're in the military, I think that you may run into emotional problems when you get out. And I know that there have been a proliferation, at least here in the LA area, of writing programs that are designed to meet the needs of veterans. And many of these veterans are coming out and are able to write wonderful, not only theater, but novels and poetry. And I just love to see that. I feel like, at my age, which is older than dirt, I feel like I have, the ability to look back on my 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, and concurrently the history that was going on at the time. And I feel like it's not that I'm the only voice, of course, because I think there are a plethora of people writing memoirs now, but I feel like we should all be remembered in some way, whether it's a word, a poem, a book, a play. And if that's all I have to leave before I go, then I'll be happy, and I sincerely hope that whether it was marching in the street at my mother's side, holding her hand for civil rights back in 1963, or whether it was joining the military. And I found myself in that bizarre place in 1976 and 77 and 78 of being the only woman permanent party officer assigned to Fort Gordon, Georgia. I found that I was the only liberated white woman. Unfortunately, I wish I had been Black or brown so that I could have better and more effectively helped women in the military. Right now, I'm working on my memoirs, so I'm working on that, but I'm also hoping that I might be able to put together a one-woman show that would have to do with, life, my life. I'd like to read a poem called We Do. It's something that I've often thought about writing about. I don't want to make this more complicated than it is, but you see whether you like it or not. It's called We Do. Who stays? Who goes? Who climbs the Capitol steps, pushes open the doors, sits on the austere marble floors, and takes up invaluable space to make a difference? I do. Who takes to the streets? Who uses words? Who shouts encouragement and drinks inspiration like it was 100 proof? We do. We will pick up the remnants we leave behind for the next generation to take to the streets. Will we? We must. Who stays? Who goes? Who climbs the mountain, builds a fire, drinks in the sky, and sends up our ashes to fill young lungs with renewed hope? We will. This is something, let's see, that I think you might enjoy at this point. This is actually about John Lewis and the death of John Lewis. And as I indicated, my mother taught me to read by the Washington Post back in the 50s. And so John Lewis was actually someone who was in my consciousness and I was very aware of for years. And I was most moved by the return of John Lewis after his death to Selma. And this is for John Lewis. It's called This Time, Hallelujah. This time, John Lewis makes it to the other side of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. Without ugly swinging baseball bats and tear gas, without attacked dogs or bloodshed and unconscious bodies, good marching for equality, good people in the streets of America. This time voices sing upright in praise of this flag-draped casket and the simple man who understood the cost of freedom and its struggle. This time rose petals line the road for him, both up and down the man-made mountain of the bridge. The silence is profound, not overcome by the stomping hooves of horses, or the blustering wind off the quiet river, or threats by the devil's own. This time the simple man carries his message home over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. One last time, it says, freedom requires all people to speak up, stand tall, be smart, march, sit back, talk back, demonstrate, prostrate, if need be, in front of the ugly faces and ugly assault weapons and still uglier ugliness. This time, John Lewis makes it to the other side of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, Selma, Alabama. He is safe in peace and not ugly pieces. Hallelujah.